Good morning, everybody. Pray all is well with you today. It's a good Wednesday, nice, bright, beautiful day. And we're just looking forward to seeing what God's going to do. Excited to be back with you this morning and ready to see and getting ready for this afternoon, this evening. The Bible study tonight as well. Good morning. Good morning. I say rejoice in the word is with us as well. Good morning to you all. Looking forward to seeing what's going to happen as we're preparing for this next stage. So listen, do me a favor. If you have a Twitter, if you have an Android product, if you can swipe up and invite your friends via Periscope, via Facebook, via Twitter. If you have an Android product, Apple product, you swipe to the right and invite your friends via Facebook, via Periscope, and via Twitter. And what will happen is we just looking for those to come in as we get ready for this one. I got a great one today, I think. I've just really been reflecting on it. It's something I've been teaching for a while and looking forward to it. We have one simple rule, and that rule is respect across the board. We respect you. We ask that you respect us, and we go from there. Again, what we like to do is we like to give people an opportunity to share and say what they want to say. Just like the one that's just been invited into our block party. So again, if you'd like to come in and be disruptive and cause problems and things like that, we just quickly invite you to our block party and you can say what you want to say there. Just like the young person that was just on a minute ago, they're gone. So again, we welcome everyone here. We give people opportunities to share. It is interactive at 2. No making change from the collection plate, right? Exactly. Once you put it in, it's in. That's it. No bounce checks, no voided, no stolen credit cards, none of those things. We're integral. Good morning, Wisdom's Angel. Good morning to you as well. Again, so we're very simple with it. I give people great opportunity to share. People have asked questions, people have comments and things, and it's fine. It doesn't bother me, but, if they want to come in and cause problems and confusion, hey, listen, there's people that are actually on Periscope for the sole intent of just being disruptive. And, I thank God and thank Periscope for their block button so you can block these folks and they can go on about their business and do what they want to do. So, again, we're going to start in about 2 more minutes. We just welcome you all, those who are new coming in. This is our morning reflection. We do this every day, Monday through Friday at 11:30 a.m., giving people an opportunity to not only share, but also an opportunity for me to share as well. Good morning. Hello to you as well. Again, I'm excited to see you all. You're new coming in. Awesome. Welcome to us. So again, for those who are new, we have some new ones on today. You can invite your followers and friends if you would. If you have an Apple product, you can swipe to the right and invite your friends via Periscope, via Twitter, via Facebook. And if you greetings from Maine, awesome. And if you have an Android product, you can swipe up and invite your friends via Periscope, via Twitter, and via Facebook. That'll help us out. And our rule is we always give 5 minutes total for people to come in, people to partake with us. New to Periscope, well, you're going to enjoy yourself. Periscope is really a great opportunity. Yes, we have an usher on board. She's passing out envelopes and bulletins. So listen, Periscope is a great tool and app that is very new in its it's still in infancy, but within its first 4 weeks of being an app, they recorded the quickest to ever reach 1 million followers and 1 million app downloads. So it's a really great product for people to post in. Outside of our rule for respect and the block party, we also thank you for the hearts. Many of you are tapping on it. If you tap on the right side of your screen, you'll see these hearts pop up. Every time you tap, it produces hearts. The more you tap, the more hearts produce. Now, Periscope, I'm hoping they fix this one day, but they haven't yet. So the one thing with Periscope is they got this one little glitch. The glitch is simple. They give you a 500 heart limit each time you're on. So if you're on the broadcast, you're like, oh, this is good. I want to keep hitting hearts. You actually, when you feel like you've given about 500 hearts, you actually have to log out and log back in order to give more hearts. So because our broadcast hasn't gotten the 3,000 people so far. The broadcast will not be full anytime soon. So if you did log out and log back in, you're not going to miss anything. But it does give you a chance to give more hearts. I know someone was disappointed yesterday. They recorded 1,700 hearts, but Periscope only recorded 500. So that's the one thing they don't realize. So yeah, exactly. Because I like to give hearts to the broadcasts that I watch. And I realize if I'm gotten to that point, I kind of log out and log back on and try to give more, because it's just really a way of supporting who's ever having that broadcast. It's that simple. So it's 11:36. Awesome. We're going to begin. I was in my reflection this morning, my study, and I was actually reading about something very simple that was taught in the book of Leviticus. Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Awesome. So in the book of Leviticus, it was a very simple couple of verses. He says in the chapter 25, when Moses said to, when Lord God said to Moses said to him that speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land that I'm going to give you, the land itself must observe a Sabbath on the Lord. So what God was telling Moses was that in the first 6 years that they are in that field, they plant in that field and they harvest in that field. But on the 7th year, they have to give it a rest. And said, do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the grapes of your untended vines, because the year has to have a land have to have a year of rest. But then it says that whatever the land yields during that year will be food for you, yourself, and all that are around you, and hired workers and temporary residents who live among you, as well as for your livestock. So whatever, he closes out and says that whatever, he says that whatever the land produces may be eaten. Broadcaster blocked. Yeah. So whatever, it says that whatever the land produces may be eaten. So I was looking at this, and there's some things that he was saying here that's really helped us out. He was saying that you can work your land for 6 years. In the 7th year, don't work it. Why? Because at that point, the land has gotten to a point where it's being exhausted, it's being overproduced, it's being worked too hard. So you have to give the land a year of rest. And once you give that land a year of rest, that means you don't tend to it, you don't touch it, you don't do anything. But you still have the ability to eat from that land during that time, not from what you've planted, but what comes up on its own. Because what happens is in those first 6 years, what you've done is you've trained the land to a point that the land knows what to produce on its own. So you don't have to put any new seed in, because the land is already producing for you. Therefore, in that last year, all you have to do is let the land rest, and you can eat from that land and then prepare the next year to plant in that field again. But the interesting thing about it was that I was hearing that God saying was that even in that time where you give your land rest doesn't mean that you should stop planting. It just means you stop planting in that field. So what happens is that we have to find in that time a way to plant in other fields that are not ours, but fields that are ready for production and ready for produce. Because if you can give your land rest and start planting in other fields, not only will you produce in the fields that are already yours, but you'll have a harvest that is awaiting you even in that season when you are not allowed to work your own land. So in other words, even in your rest, you'll get production. Even in your rest, there's produce. Even in your rest, there's increase. Because God is always saying that we have to live in a continual sowing and reaping lifestyle where we will always plant and reap. We always sow, we always reap. We always plant, we always harvest. But the only way for that to happen is that you have to not only know the land that you're in, but you also have to be able to plant in land that's not yours. Even Christ told the disciples, said, see those fields ripe for harvest, one plants, another one harvests. So you have to realize that there are fields that others have planted just for you that you have yet to see, but also that there are fields that you are to plant in for those that you'll never meet. And in order for you to do that, you have to be faithful enough in God to trust him enough in that and say, okay, now this is my season, this is my year. of non-working my own field, but it doesn't mean that I'm resting. He's saying give the land time to rest. He doesn't say for you to rest. He says let the land rest, because the land has to have a time to rest, but you still have to keep producing. So if you take a vacation when your land is vacationing, then you're going to go through a year of drought instead of a year of harvest. You got to be able to have planting somewhere, so when your land is resting in that year, you're reaping in another field and preparing to plant again in your own field. That's how it looks. You think about this. You go to the bank, you have two accounts. You have your checking accounts and you have your savings account. You function from your checking account, but you put away in your savings account for when the checking account comes up short. So what God is saying to us, he says that in verse 7, whatever the land produces may be eaten. So he's saying that if the land doesn't produce anything, you still have to eat, but you may not eat it from there. You have to eat from someone else's field if you have produced it properly. Now, so I'm listening to this and I'm reading this, and I clearly heard him say this. He said, do not plant in the familiar fields, but plant in virgin soil. It's time to plant where you haven't been before, and to give the land where you've been planting a season and time to rest. Because of this, a rested land will produce double. Let me say that again. A rested land will produce double. That means in your first season, which is 7 years, that first season you have done all you can and you've planted in that soil. That soil is now richly prepared to produce whatever you give it. But if you keep producing in there, what's going to happen is just going to give you the same yield that you've had the last 6 years. So in that 7th year, you don't touch the land. Let the land restore itself, regenerate itself, reproduce what you're already doing. So what happens when you plant seed, and again, the seed you're planting is always going to be connected to seed that didn't grow in the other years, but now has the ability to grow, which is why you're producing double. So all of a sudden, you have a double portion coming, and you didn't even see it, because you had to realize that if you only plant in the way that you've always planted, you always receive what you expect to receive. But God is a God of unexpected. Therefore, if you plant right and rest the land as he says so, then your next season of planting should produce double. I tell pastors all the time, if in your first 7 years, you didn't get to your 100 members, stop trying to produce them in that last year. Focus on the membership that you have. Tighten them up, train them, equip them, and prepare them. And then in that next year, as you go back to trying to build your membership, it should double, because of the fact that the people that you have been caretaking for, teaching, training, and preparing, shepherding, and pastoring, now having them the seed that you planted, and they can produce more, because all we can do is produce the seed. The seed has to reproduce itself. So if you cannot prepare people for greater, then they won't understand greater and they won't live in greater. So in other words, to expand your effectiveness, look for places that need your seed. Let me say it again. To expand your effectiveness, you need to look for places that need your seed. That means that if you keep planting seed in your own field, then all you're going to get is what you know. There's things that you don't know that's going to help you move greater, but you have to find other fields to plant in order to do that. That means you may see a ministry that's struggling, but yet your church home is doing well, and you just say, well, I'm going to sow into my own church, but I'm going to sow into this other church. It doesn't mean that I'm, moving churches. I want to help them produce and grow, because I want to invest. That's what investors do. They plant stock in other buildings and companies. They may never go to these corporations, but they own stock. They invested in the growth because they believed in it. They said earlier this week that Oprah had bought a 10% stock in Weight Watchers, and the stock went doubled, and it went 100% increase in its price in that day. Just because of her simple 10% investment, they got 100%, a double portion of their stock price. You got to get to a point where your 10% in someone else's life is going to produce double in them. And then once it produces double in them, watch that double come back to you, because you are planting in soil that you have never known before, because you believe that the word of God says plant where you could produce. And that means that you produce where you plant. You have to realize this: a needy soil will protect the soil and will protect the seed and consider the seed a blessing instead of the curse. So you see somebody that's in need and you plant in their life, they're cheerfully and they're happy, they're ecstatic that you thought about them, and then they're going to cherish what you gave them. They're going to cherish what you put in them. They're going to cherish what you invested in them. And they're not going to go waste it. They're going to be mindful of it. And they're going to say, somebody thought enough about me in my troubled times to help me out. And I'm going to take what they gave me and I'm going to produce a harvest from it. So first thing you have to do is you need to believe that the seed that God has put in you is fertile. You need to believe that the seed that God put in you is strong enough to grow in any ground that you put it in. You have to believe that the seed that God gave you is just as faithful as you are to God. Because if it is faithful, then when you plant it, no matter the ground, no matter how hard the soil, when you plant it in the right way, it must produce a harvest simply because it must be obedient to that which created it, which is God. So when you plant it in the right ground, you'll produce a harvest. But when you plant it in the ground God called you to, you're going to produce a double harvest. Because what happens is the ground is prepared for what you're producing, and it's already destined to give you more than enough. So if you keep planting in the wrong soil, you're going to get limited produce. But if you plant where God says plant, you're going to receive double and you're going to get an increase in it. So that means you plant not only where you live, where you dwell, but you plant in other fields that you believe can grow, because you need to see in them what they don't see. It's all about supporting around you. God never said not to support. God said keep planting in multiple fields. That's why those who are very wealthy or have their money spread out all over the place, because they're not just worried. They're not making money off of one business. They're making money off of numerous businesses because they're planting in multiple fields. How many fields are you planting in today? And if you only planting in one, at some point the field's got to rest, because if you don't let it rest, it won't produce more. Everyone needs a rest to be re-energized, to step up, to do more. Everyone needs a rest long enough to find that energy to get up, to move. Exactly. Dying to self daily. Exactly. So the thing is, one thing you have to realize is this: your seed is nothing to waste, and your seed is nothing to overcrop. So when you plant properly, you will produce greater, and I beg to say today that you will produce double, because this means that you plant in your land while looking for other fields to plant in as well. If you only plant in your backyard and your next door neighbor is hungry, then you are limiting your opportunity to increase. You may never know what they have for you. You better take some of that harvest that you have already produced and knock on that neighbor's door and say, I see your struggle. This is all I can give you right now. But every time I produce, I'm going to give you more. So you keep doing what you do. You're going to look up one day to go out and plant in that field, and you're going to see your neighbor tending to the garden for you and saying, look, don't worry about this field. I got it for you. Can you help me to create one in my backyard so we both can share together? You don't even know what your plant, what your seed, what your investment will do for others and how it will come back to help you. So you have to know that this is a time to plant, this is a time to harvest, but this is a time to produce greater than what you've ever produced before. And there is more to it than what you think. So this means that that seed that you plant in your land is the same as what you plant in other fields. So one thing plant the seed, someone else will water. Exactly. But here's the kicker. If you don't plant it, they won't water, because they won't have anything to water. And here's the thing. So you're expecting them to water your field. No, the water that they're speaking about is you planting in another field that's not even yours. How do I know? Because there are farmers even today who are willing to lease out their land to those who will rekindle the productivity in that land. You have farmers that have too much land and not enough workers. So you find that, you go to them and say, listen, you give me this portion of your land to work, and I will plant in it, and you will receive your harvest from it, and so shall I. And they say, if you keep producing a harvest here, I will continue to sow into your life. Who are you sowing into and helping them to get to that next level of harvest? And if you're not, then you can't be upset when your harvest is limited. There is double coming if you plant the right way. And the first way to do that is to understand this. Let the field that you're in, if you know you've been working it for at least 6 years, give it a year of rest. Take your hands off your own field. Start working in someone else's field. Work in that field and then come back to yours a year later and know that now, okay, you've rested. I've given you time to recoup. I've given you time to remove the stress and the pain. And now let me plant back in you. Let's make this happen and watch the double come up, because the double is going to come from what you planted in your field and what you planted in another field. It is really, really clear, people. It's not about just doing. You want to enlarge your territory, as the prayer of Jabez says, expand and enlarge my territory. How can you do that if you limit it to only the fields that you believe that are yours? You purchased them, but God will still give you time to plant in someone else's. You're just looking at what's in your backyard. So you're going to buy 4x4 or 5x5. But God is saying, can you go next door and plant for them? Can you go down the street and plant to them? Look, there's a harvest ripe. Harvest it for them. They may not even have the energy to do it. I read a story about a couple of young men who cut the lawn of a lady, an elderly lady's house, because she was too old to do it herself, and the city was charging her fines for her overgrown grass. They cut that grass one time. But them cutting that grass one time caused the community to start maintaining that yard for her. So that one simple seed that they did of planting it, cutting that grass one time, caused the rest of the neighborhood to take turns to cut that grass each week, so that she would never get another fine and another bill. And it brought the community together. One seed produced a great harvest. You don't even know what that seed is. I'm not even talking about money. I'm talking about time, energy, effort, resources. It's not just planting a seed of money, but it's about what can you do? How can you plant in somebody's life and cause a harvest to be produced in them that would encourage them to want to plant a seed in you? We want the harvest. God said, y'all want the harvest. I want the seed, because the seed's going to reproduce for me more than the harvest. The harvest is what I'm going to consume. The seed is what I'm going to use to produce what I can consume. So if I don't have any productivity, then I'm just eating off of someone else's plate, and I'm not giving them anything in return. So what are you doing today? Giving your field a rest. Take a minute to slow down on what you're doing. Give that a rest. Take a vacay and work on something else that's going to produce just as much or get you to a place of production. But give that one. If you're running around in circles, bumping your head against the wall, getting frustrated in that vision that you have, and it doesn't seem anything is working, and you find yourself in a dry spell, take a vacation from it for a minute. Say, okay, let me take a break. Let me focus on something else first. You focus on that. You look at the next portion. You look at another vision that you have. Work on that project. Work on that assignment. Give that original that's been frustrating you a vacation. That means you've worked it 6 years. God says give it the 7th year, leave it alone, let it rest, and live off of what's being made in that. So even though you're getting little portions from it, if you give it time, what will happen is not only are you giving the land the time to be rejuvenated, you're giving your mind time to rejuvenate. You're giving your energy, you're getting energy and focus to revision the vision and see more in it than you saw before. And what will happen is you'll see where you're missing it. You'll see the errors of your ways and say, okay, let me revamp this portion. This is why it hasn't been producing. And suddenly you'll get a double portion coming because you didn't look at the vision the right way. New beginnings is 8. So 7 is finished. So you can't go into a new season until the 7th is finished. And that means that last year you're preparing the rest. You're preparing the time to rest. Give it a breather. Give it a break. Give it a time to regroup and reproduce, and then go back to it and see what happens. Am I telling you to walk away, close the doors to your church and this? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is let the vision work itself. That's all God is saying. He says when you stop putting your hands on it in that last year, let it produce. Because what happens is, this is my last portion of it. What we do is we work a vision so hard that we don't give the vision time to show us that it learned from what we've taught it. So we just keep working it and never take our hands off of it. And then what happens is now the vision doesn't have time to produce what it can produce and to show you that what you have already planted is going to reap a harvest, because we're so busy toiling over it, tending to it, focusing and over-focusing on it. And we're working the field so much that we're not even helping it. We're actually destroying it. That's why I say die to yourself daily. Exactly. Because if we keep working it, we keep putting too much into it, we keep put too much effort into it, we're limiting the productivity instead of letting the productivity have a heartbeat and to flow and function effectively. So you have to give it time to rest. I'm not telling you to rest. I'm just saying, but if you have when you take your hands off of that vision, that means you should have other visions to work on as well. So if you're working on all of them and bringing them together, you're going to get into a point where you're overwhelmed in blessings and overflowing in God's call, and all of a sudden your life is working on all cylinders, and there's no lack anywhere. But it comes from knowing how to tend to your fields properly, and knowing what to plant in what field, and knowing what seed to sow, but also knowing what ground to leave alone long enough for it to regroup and to rejuvenate and to be revived. Because revival only happens when there's a dry spell. Revival only happens when that fire has been put out. Revival only happens when there's a need to reinvigorate what's already there, when it needs a jump start and more energy. That means that a revival comes when the place has gotten tired and fatigued from doing the work and seeing no productivity. But if you give a rest, then you can reignite the fire. You just gotta let it rest for a year, as God said, or a season, or a period of time. So seek out those who have more than enough but cannot manage it all, and are looking for people to work the lands they cannot, because there you will find fertile ground, and there you will produce a double harvest. And when you help them produce, and then you go back to your field with greater work, you'll see a double in your field as well. I'm telling you, people, today is the day where you let that field rest, so that it can produce a double in your life. Let it rest and produce but isn't the father the husbandman or the harvester? Yes, the Father is the husbandman and the harvester. But at the end of the day, he gives us time to harvest. He gives us fields to harvest. What he's saying is that you can't harvest your own field if you haven't planted in it, because he says one man sows, another man reaps. So it really comes down to, if you plant in someone else's field, you may not harvest in that field, but you've planted. But also that means that you'll be able to harvest in a field that you didn't plant in. So God is the harvester, but God is the one that waters as well. So he also instructs us when and where to harvest. So we have to know what fields to pull from and know which ones we're not. We are the fruit. I think he is yes, we are the fruit. God is divine, but he also proves us. But guess what the fruit does? A fruit is created with seed. So if you look at nature, when a fruit is fallen to the ground and never picked up, the fruit decays, but the seed is now transferred to the soil and it produces more. So no matter what, we're produced with seed. So we've been inherently built to produce a harvest no matter what we do, because God built us with seed within us. That is our assignment. But also he gave us the ability to harvest as well, because we still have to eat. We still have to reproduce. We still have to provide. So he calls us to sow and reap, and at all times. And we have to be able to know when we are the seed and when we are the harvest. And once you know that, then you will always be in a life of continual sowing and reaping, because it's a key. Excuse me. It's the key to know that when God puts you and God plants you, he plants you to produce. He planted you to produce. And then he causes the harvest to happen. So we have been given that. The God just said that you and I will sharpen our swords. Yes, because he causes us to increase. He causes us to be better than what we've ever been. But it's a continual sowing and reaping. And you have to know. So you have to know the land. You have to know the field. You have to know what soil to plant in and know when to plant it. And when you do, it'll be a great time for your life. Listen, that's all I have for you today. Again, I thank you all for this time. This has been a great day, a great, awesome experience. Again, you can follow me at Bishop Truesdale on Twitter and on Periscope here. You can follow me on Facebook. You can also reach out to me on our website, www.detruesdale.com. You can check me you can send me an email if you have prayer requests or concerns. The email is bishoptruesdale@hotmail.com. We're working on a YouTube page. We're doing all these things, and we're just really giving opportunities to expand the kingdom and grow and build. And I'm getting off today on time today. But again, if you want to, you can check us out every day, Monday through Friday. 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be here. And on Wednesdays, and that is today, we'll be back tonight at 7:30 p.m. for our Bible study. We've been studying the pastoral letters of Paul to Timothy, and we're really into it right now. It's been helpful to those ministry leaders, and you're welcome to partake. We include our Periscope into that on our Wednesday Bible study. It's an intimate Bible study that we do just so that we can include the Periscope group family in it as well. So you are welcome to come visit with us this evening as well. Listen, I thank you for the time. I thank you for the harvest of the hearts that you posted, the community, the constant conversation. It's really been a joy today, and I look forward to seeing you all on tomorrow. And remember this, as I'm praying for you, that God's will continue to surpass in your life, that the plans of God will continue to increase in your life, and that God will continue to show you those fields in which your seed, the seed that he had birthed in you, would be able to be planted to produce a great harvest, and that you will move upon the manifestations of God in your life, and that there will be a greater and a double coming in your life, simply because you know where to plant your seed and then expect the harvest. And I believe in God right now that there will be more than enough in your life and all that you do as you continue to watch the steps that are set before you and continue to fulfill the promises God has laid before you. This is a great day that God has made for you, and all is good. In Jesus' name, we say amen. And yes, you can befriend me on Facebook. All you got to do is send a friend request there. Again, I will include you. I'm at my 5,000 limit, but I have been removing some people who are not really contributing or supportive. So if you send a friend request, we will include you on there. So again, listen, gotta go, gotta get prepared, finishing up for this evening. I look forward to seeing you all. If I don't see you this evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be back again tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the blessings of God in your life. Know where to plant those seeds in those fields. And remember this, today is great because you're in it, and God called you to be great, because he says, greater is he that is in me than he is in the world. Because greater is in you, you're in a greater day. Greatness is always around. Peace and blessings to you all. Love you to life, and I'll see you this evening. God bless.